turning back.
Welcome to the Last Boy Scouts podcast.
Welcome back.
Back in the studio.
Back in the studio.
Dude.
Still fighting technical issues.
Still
but
fighting technical issues.
We're just getting better.
Yeah, the technical issues from great time filming out of the bus.
I love the bus.
The bus was awesome.
So jealous.
And it was cool because we were able to go to the spot second time, set up quickly. But we were still having some technical glitches just because even before we started the podcast today, we had a little business meeting of where we see the podcast going and the flow and how to get more guests, how to make the guests comfortable, how to film, how to do the wireless part, or do we just do microphones?
Right.
And thankfully, all I do is just sit here and listen as you brainstorm or soundboard your ideas, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things that we have misstepped in our generation of men is like the need for other good men and to have those good men. I think we talked about this on one of the earlier podcasts, like, the best thing I ever did for myself when I was lost and I was broken down was find a good therapist. Obviously you've talked about you and my jiu-jitsu journey and like just how awesome it was to have you just say, "Hey, welcome back. Glad you're here." Glad you're here. Like it meant the world to me. And like, even still, as we grow this podcast, like just being able to kind of brain vomit, because I'm such an overthinker. Like I've gone through and looked at new equipment. What do I do? What kind of equipment should we be running? Like, should we make it easier? Right now we're running equipment that I've had on hand, and I've shot stills for a long time. And so we're using some Canons that I have, and should we upgrade to something that's maybe a little bit easier and may reduce some of these technical glitches and make it easier for us?
And we have the first generation of the podcast, the first couple episodes that moved into our kind of like a stride of really good episodes, to changing some things up to film out of the bus, to where people were critiquing and people were kind of giving us, "Hey, have you thought about this? Hey, did you think about this?" And if you're not careful, you take that as criticism as opposed to advice or guidance. And like you said, like men in general are not built to receive a lot of feedback without taking it personal or, turning that off, tuning that out, because we're thinking, you don't know how much time and passion I have involved in this. Next thing you know, you're kind of pissed off. But when you have searched out help and you have been able to go inside yourself and realize that, like, we're just a learning progress. We're just learning about stuff, right? And I'm always a student. There are times when I teach, but for the most part, I treat myself as a student and learn. When you get self-help, it's one of the first things that, like, they help you along, is that, like, asking for help, seeking guidance, seeking to understand is not wrong. I just don't think that men are given that tool quickly.
We have this innate ability in the psychological world, as they call it, to achieve what we call homeostasis.
Right.
Like that is the
kind of a line.
Right. And we've talked about this, like how quickly can we return to, whether it's
like our baseline.
Right. And then so we have this concept of feedback, right? Feedback happens in one of two ways, right? Positive feedback is going to be any feedback that triggers a response, either positive and or negative, which is weird, because negative feedback is truly, it creates no change to homeostasis. Right. So it's a weird kind of like psychological fact that is how we maintain. We want to maintain, right?
And you have peaks and valleys, you have ebbs and flows.
Oh, absolutely.
Hopefully, and you see it with men that are struggling, like sometimes their peaks are super high and their valleys are super low. You notice it when, if a person who never has an outburst all of a sudden has an outburst. Or a person who is super, like, always happy, always ready to go, and all of a sudden they're like, man, Debbie Downer. Right. And maybe it's because they're lost or stuck in their own thoughts. But when we soundboard for each other, especially like what we did before we started the podcast, whatever's in your brain just comes out. It may not, truthfully, when we're talking technical stuff, we're talking cameras, we're talking studio setup, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Looks great to me.
Yeah.
And I don't even offer any feedback except for I'm cool with whatever you decide.
Yeah.
Here's where I think is great. Most of the time, my conversations are really small and you're brain vomiting everything that's in your head about the technical stuff. And I'm like, my job is just to listen.
Yeah.
Because if I offer advice or offer guidance in your thought moment, you may stop and be like, okay, I'm lost in where I was at. If you just keep going, keep telling me what you're feeling, keep telling me everything that's going on in your head, and I'm like, get it all out, dude.
Yeah.
Get it all out. Maybe you sleep better tonight or you don't go and research, crazy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Spin on down the road
of the path of what things could do.
Yeah.
And especially like wireless mics and all this other crazy shit that we want to do absolutely means nothing to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, it really doesn't mean anything to me.
I mean, I think like we want to put on a good show, right? We understand that like we started this as kind of a passion project, right? How it gets shot was less important to the message that we were trying to say, right? Like we are trying to share our individual stories. We're trying to relate to other men who may not feel comfortable or may not have been in an environment where it's cool to have these type of conversations, right? And so I think that's why we just started doing it, and like we kind of piecemealed together. Like I knew that there were some areas where it's worth making an investment, right? We always wanted to be audio first,
sure.
So the highest audio quality, knock on wood, like that was our primary function. That's why you see, studio grade equipment that is. Helps us capture that.
I agree.
We now have kind of gotten to a point where like, hey, there's a big wide world out there we want to explore. There's people we want to have on. Like, how do we bring in other voices to the podcast, continue making it entertaining so it's not just Danny and I preaching every week.
And it's ever evolving.
Yeah.
And so it's ever growing. So those moments where we may not capture exactly what we're wanting to capture, it's still moving forward in our vision of things. And with just being a soundboard, with just looking for guidance, with asking questions, seeking to understand, it's easy when you have, you've been on that path of work. And I'm not sure that every man has that ability. Like, I've had great men around me. I still have great men around me. It's interesting because if we go back to jiu-jitsu and you're sitting at class, right? And a lot of times schools maybe have curriculums.
Yeah.
In our school, there is a curriculum.
Yeah.
It's the white to blue belt moves, right? Yep. But a lot of times the instructor comes in and you go and they say, hey, does anybody have a question?
Oh, man. I had such a crazy experience last night with that exact same thing happening. Like it's professor tells you to come in with a plan.
Right.
And sometimes I do. Sometimes I just want to fight, right? Sometimes I just want to roll. And so when he says, when Nick or whoever's in charge leading the class says that, like, I always hate when it's like silent.
Yeah,
right?
Crickets.
Right. So
everybody's looking at each other.
Nick's teaching Nogi last night, and we're all just standing around like a bunch of weirdos in our spandex, right? Like nobody's saying anything. And mind you, we have 3 black belts. We have a brown belt and a purple belt and a couple of blue belts and some white belts. And nobody was saying anything, nothing. And so finally I'm like, okay, fine. The baseball bat choke. Let's learn the baseball bat choke. Yeah. Awesome. And of course it's a, I'm thinking like I've seen people do it without the gi, but it's a traditional gi move.
It's a gi move.
And really what I wanted was like, how do I attack the neck? What are some more other creative ideas besides the Darce, the anaconda, the
if you weren't in an environment of people like that,
I caught so much shit last night.
Man, I bet
Nick Jax was just giving me so much shit. He did kind of at the end. He was like, "Yeah, I've done the baseball choke, the baseball bat choke." Dude, everyone's like, "Hey, what's the baseball bat choke?" And I'm like, "Okay, is it the baseball choke?"
Yeah. So it's a baseball choke.
Baseball choke.
Yeah, because you put your hands as if they were in a baseball, like grabbing the baseball bat.
Oh. Right. Yeah, so
you put your hands
crazy.
But if you grab, like in Nogi, if you grab your fingers and turn your hands down, and for those of you that are watching, gi, you're able to have a grip on each side.
Each side.
But in Nogi, you grab your fingers and turn your wrists down and your fingers down, and now you have the same concept with your. So there is such thing.
Yeah,
but it's a soundboard.
Yeah,
right. It's a soundboard. It's another idea of a soundboard in our own world of jiu-jitsu of like. Any questions? And there's so many people that don't want to ask questions because you don't want to be embarrassed.
I was so embarrassed. And I was like, for the like a few minutes, I was like, okay, I'm kind of embarrassed, but at the same time, I'm like,
get off the mat.
Nobody else fucking said anything. You're all just standing around with your dicks in your hands, like the baseball bat choke. I'm like, oh, okay, go ahead, just give it to me.
I had a similar experience down in Lehigh where same concept, like. Professor came on the mat and he said, "Hey, anybody got any questions?" Same thing, crickets, and everybody's looking at me, and I'm like, I have lots of questions, but most of the time it's like for my own thought process or the own journey that I'm on. So I asked him a question. He answered it, but he goes, "It's not really the way that I see this class going." Yeah. And I'm thinking, I know, but I want to get the. It's always easier for somebody to ask a question. Yeah. It does get the dialogue going. It does get things going. And the class ended up turning out really, really good. Like you just said. Oh, yeah. It turns out really good. And maybe like you're the heel for a moment.
Right.
And with the fact that we do this anyways. Like we soundboard where sometimes like I'll say something about a camera equipment or about something that I know. I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. And there's times when like, I can see that your brain is actually going as I'm asking the questions that I'm like, yeah, you don't give a shit what I'm saying, right? But we have done
That's
work.
Not true. Let me stop you right there. That's not true. I always care what you say, Danny.
For sure.
I always care.
But we've been able to soundboard, and we also have started the process of working on ourselves, and it does make it easier. And I don't believe that every man has that idea because you just have this inner voice that tells you don't say nothing. Don't say nothing. Just keep grinding. Keep struggling. And like if you just asked a simple question, the whole thing, maybe the whole world would open up of all these like things that you could do.
You can't make fun of me if I don't say anything.
It's so true.
I'm protected, right? I'm protected.
Yeah.
And these are the same people that get on the keyboard and, type out all kinds of shit on the keyboard.
Yeah. Because they're hidden. They don't have to like look you in the eye as they say things to you, which is great about like our academy because we have such these walk of life of men that bring in like this great energy and these different walks of life. I think Mike talked about this the other day, like how lucky we are that we have this academy where we walk in these different walks of life and we are able to blend with each other and learn this art where potentially each person has a different way of performing that art because of the different body styles. Right? And when you put it back into perspective of men's health, we right now, of course, because of the next week is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
We get through this week and I can feel everybody's energy starting to like really kind of get like nervous. Once we hit next week and election week starts, it's going to be crazy because we have gotten to a point in our world where, people tell us how men are supposed to look.
Yeah. We have this like, we kind of pussified. I just finished reading Adam Carolla's book, In 50 Years We'll All Be Chicks, which is funny because he actually wrote the book nearly 25 years ago. Right. And it's like, we do kind of have this, like we've been groomed that like, let's take the aggressive side out of men. Great class, by the way. We ended up covering guillotines and rear nakeds. And I want to ask you at some point about the fights over the weekend, because I think it plays well into the topic of conversation of like finding those dark spaces and finding like true rite of passage. Like we've neutered the rite of passage for men in our culture.
For sure. And a lot of times I think you talk about this a lot, with things that people telling you that you're a toxic male or toxic man or toxic
masculinity.
I have an opinion. I have an opinion, and sometimes if I voice my opinion and I can tell that the crowd is not the fact that like I'm a man and I say whatever I want to say, and when one of the funniest things that like I tell people is like I'm about that life. Like
Yeah.
I'm about that life. When the kids say stand on business, like I stand on business.
I got a hot take. Like I believe, there is such thing as toxic masculinity, right? It's absolutely out there. I think masculinity is to men what feminism is to women.
Sure.
They are the same. They're two different sides of the same coin. Now, granted, there has been this concept of the patriarchy that's been in charge for forever. I don't want to get into the social and or political reasons behind that, right? Typically, the stronger of the species is going to dominate.
Just the way it is.
It's just like there's always going to be something
I'll debate it.
Dark.
I will debate it with every single person. They're not sending everybody with a gun.
Right.
Because not everybody has that same ability to turn everything off and be like, cool, this is my job.
Yeah. There is always going to be that person that is toxic.
Sure.
That feels downtrodden, that is broken.
Sure.
That potentially will do harm in the effort to gain personally.
I agree with you.
And if they, we talked a lot about the Native American tribes early on in the podcast, right? The warring class of Native American tribes, if they were bigger than the tribe that had something that they wanted, they just went and took it.
Just the way it is.
And I'm willing to bet you could follow that pattern throughout the epochs of humankind.
I agree with you.
Right. And so now we have kind of neutered this sense out. We've created such a safe society that like we need to like dial that back. And I'm not saying that because we are in a civilized society that we haven't dialed it back, but you see something like the fights this weekend, that rear naked choke, that you knocked out his teeth, broke his jaw. Like
you've had a choke on you where it's on your chin, on your teeth, where you go, show me the next day and you have a bruise on the inside of your mouth.
Yep.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. When you do, there are people out there whose soul, they say, my job is to break you.
Yep.
If that means that your teeth are knocked out and my teeth aren't, I've done my job. And
you see the post-fight interview and you just see this cold person. I'm like, I kind of got chills. I was like, damn, like that is
an animal.
That is somebody that you don't want to mess with. He stood on business. He's like, yeah, it's my job. Yeah. Right. He could have tapped earlier and saved the job, but they were fighting for something. They were fighting for this purse money. Now, what does that money mean to one person versus what does it mean to the other?
Yeah, some people it's life changing,
right?
And I think that with like wars, that like if I'm fighting for what I believe in, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect my and mine.
You need me on that wall.
You need me on that
You want me on that
yeah,
wall.
Dude. Right? And this is our platform. So I think about that when next week comes into play.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking like, who do I want? Maybe I don't agree with some of the things that they say. Maybe I don't. But who do I want people outside of this country seeing on the line in the interviews when it comes to don't come over here.
Yeah.
Don't come in here. Don't come into my house.
Yeah.
If you come into my house, there will be actions taken.
If you do it the wrong way.
And
it's not that we don't. Because it's not that we don't. We have a process in place. Yes, maybe that process is broken, but let's address that rather than just write a blank check to people.
And I, because I served in the military and because I have a child in the military, I know it's like, hey, my kid is out there.
Yeah.
He put himself out there and he's had action, not where he's carrying a gun and shooting, but he's definitely been in action where somebody's chasing him and the bad guy is chasing them. And it's like, don't stop this car.
Yeah.
Do not stop this car. Go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you stop this car, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And he also told me like there were people on the ground crying as this is going on. And he's looking at them like, this is not going to save you.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I know it's scary.
Yeah.
This is not going to save you.
Right.
And I think, as you move on and as you think about like who do you want next to you, next week will become a deciding factor for us for a little while of how we're viewed.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that every man has has been given the ability for violence.
Yeah.
But I think every man has the ability for violence.
It's in there. Some of us have lived such cush lives that we've satiated it and neutered it and put it in a box and said we're not going to look in this box.
And sometimes I think myself, the way that I come off, like, would be perceived as like toxic in certain environments, especially if I'm around people who may lean towards one thing.
Yeah.
And that's where like we get into our topic tonight of ownership.
Yeah.
Of like, yes, this is who I am.
Yep.
I'm kind, I'm gentle,
Mm-hmm.
I'm super understanding. I want to be your friend, but when it comes to ownership, I will own exactly who I am at all times.
I'm the warrior in the garden.
I know that if you come into my house uninvited, I may not be the nicest person to you.
I think tonight's topic is especially important. Talking about ownership of your life. Like, we've all been in situations where maybe we haven't. Perhaps there's men or boys living in their basement that are just keyboard warriors. Their mom brings them pizza rolls every night, and they're safe, and they're mama's little boy. Like, I'm sure they're out there. We owe it to ourselves to go on a journey, and a lot of what I believe is the problem we have with masculinity today is that our rights to passage into manhood have completely eroded.
I agree.
There is no walkabout. There is no challenge. There is no test. There is nothing that there's no matriculation from youth to manhood.
I agree.
And we give kids this social media. They are able to see and access all parts of the world, and they just take it and they run with it.
And when you're talking about ownership, like whether it's successes, failures, the in-betweens, like you talked about the line, like here's your baseline. If you're having a successful day, all of a sudden you're feeling great, you have jubilation, and let's say you're below the line and you're having failures and you're blaming other things, other people, other situations for the fact that of just the fact that life is not rainbows.
Right.
It's full of failures.
Right.
It literally is full of failures. And when we mask that by only wanting successes or everybody gets a ribbon, everybody gets an award.
Right.
You're not giving the people the ability to have ownership.
Right.
To own whatever you're doing.
Right.
Whatever mistakes you make, whatever successes you have, just have ownership of
right.
them. And how do we find ownership? How do we gain ownership? How do we give you and I the ability to be like, hey, this is your life, this is my life. We can find a common ground.
Yeah.
And the ownership is like, you're not blaming Danny for the fact that the equipment isn't running correctly.
Right.
You're like, hey man, I'm making a mistake and I need a soundboard.
So one of the things I do with my children is their first mistake when they get into their teenage years, I will take whatever is precious to them. Whatever is precious to them becomes mine. And I've had some toxic points, and my daughter can certainly tell you about the time I folded her iPad over my knee out of rage. But I remember like one of her first mistakes, I actually took her phone and said, okay, you can have your phone back, but I gave her a copy of Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. I wrote a little inscription in the front, and I gave it to her, and she couldn't get her phone back until she finished reading it. It's not a difficult read.
Sure.
But it is by far one of the best books on taking ownership.
I agree.
And how taking ownership shapes the systems in which you interact with.
I agree with you. The framing that Jocko is able to do is about because having an extreme ownership of things is an exception, an accepting failure, accepting the fact that like that you're going to make mistakes. But then if I blame you for this, if I blame my parents, if I blame my dad because he took away my phone, my dad is this asshole. I also liken it to a book called Raising Men. And he said, your kid's on the Xbox and you don't like it, grab that Xbox, throw it in the pool and be like, yeah, go ahead, play it now.
Yeah.
You know, same thing. Like, that's it, this is the way it is, man. You act a certain way. Here's the consequences. If you start blaming me for your actions, then we haven't gotten to extreme ownership.
Yeah.
But when we get to ownership, it's kind of easy when you take ownership.
It is liberating in the sense. Sure. It is liberating in the sense because you move from a to me into a for me. And what I mean by that is that like there were periods in my life where life was happening to me.
Sure.
Oh, I'm going through a divorce. Look what my ex is doing to me.
For sure.
Oh, I didn't get the job. Look what the universe is doing to me.
Sure.
It does take a significant amount of reframing to say, oh, I'm getting divorced. Good. Now I can go find a partner who's better suited for me.
Sure.
I didn't get that job. The universe is lining up for a better a better opportunity for me.
For me, and the idea of this is a better path for me is hard. Especially like as a young man, because you see, like, let's say you see your friends having successes or people around you having successes and you're not. A lot of times you just don't see your successes. You don't see what's happening. So then you're like, well, that person has this great life and now jealousy takes over. And instead of accepting who you are and accepting ownership, you start blaming other things and blaming other people for your own insecurities and your own problems.
Yeah.
Right. That's where I struggled with as a young man. I struggled hard owning my life.
Yeah.
Everything was because of the fact that I didn't have a dad. Everything was because my mom wasn't the mom, you know, she couldn't provide me brand new shoes. I had to work from the time I was 16. Everything was somebody else's fault. But I never was able to take ownership of that. This is just the cards that I was given, and I'm going to make the best out of it that I possibly can.
And it pulls you out of a state of gratitude. And I will say this until I'm blue in the face, but I really do believe gratitude is the fertilizer for a spectacular life.
Well said.
It is a fertilizer for a spectacular life. And if things are happening to you, then you are not grateful for what you have. You are seeking from a place of ego and to me, and you're just in for a world of sadness.
Yep.
And I know because I've experienced it. I've certainly have been there. Like, poor me, this happened to me. Poor me, this happened to me. It's interesting because it does kind of boil down to how do we train our reticular activation system, the part of our brain that filters out all the goddamn information that's going off.
Sure.
Like, our brain is a supercomputer. If we spend a lot of time in that to me, we then are programmed for to me, and we have to take a significant amount of effort to reprogram that part of your brain. It's like an addiction, right? An addiction from a chemical sense. When I get addicted to drugs, I am
chasing something.
I'm chasing something.
Yeah, you want that. Like, you're like, man, that made me feel this way, so I want to feel that way again.
Right, and that is the homeostasis that you change. I cannot maintain homeostasis, and so one of the 4 principles I live by is that our brain is hardwired for survival.
I agree.
And so we program that survival to look so many different ways.
I agree.
It looks different for you than it looks different for me. Each of us as human beings, it manifests in whatever the population, 8 billion different ways to however you programmed it. Right. And it's based on the system in which you grow up, your parents, your influences.
And it can also go back to just like building blocks from your parents' parents, or like their parents. And so genetic code does play
absolutely,
like, being the fact that, like, if your parents struggled, your parents struggled, you're probably going to be built for struggle.
I read this fascinating book not too long ago. I'd have to go back to remember the name, but he actually, the author did a study amongst a particular sect of Jewish folks who went through the Holocaust. And he can actually tell stories of generations down where memories of being, in the internment camps were passed down to like 2 or 3 generations below, where they're waking up and they're like, that wasn't my experience. That was my grandmother's or my great grandfather's. So you're absolutely right. The kind of concept of epigenetics in those things, I think, is not super mainstream and not very well known, but it's absolutely a thing that happens.
I think one of the hardest things that I know that one of the hardest things that my boys, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No, you're good.
I think one of the hardest things that my boys tell me is that I'm so against some of the things that my parents did that I go to extremes when I raise them. Mm-hmm. Right? Like if they call me and they're having a bad day, I always say, good. Like just like Jocko. Yeah. Good. Having a bad day? Good. Dog left you, or dog ran away? Good. Wife left you? Good. Yeah. Everything is good. Yeah. Good. That's because that's going to build something in you that when shit really gets bad, you're going to be okay. And sometimes my boys will be like, Dad, I just want you to listen to what I'm saying. And I'm like, I will listen to you. When you're ready, I'll give you advice, but I'm always going to say good. Yeah. Perfect. That's what shit hits the fan. Your car broke down. You can't pay your rent. You don't have food. Your everything is just feels like shit. Good.
Yeah, it's interesting because he, if you've read the book, he talks a little bit about stress in those situations, and he goes, "What is stress?" Right? Like sometimes I'm telling you those things because I'm stressed. Well, cool. Stress comes from one of two things. One, is it a problem that I can solve? Mm-hmm. And if it's a problem that I can solve, then it comes from the fact that I haven't just gone out and solved it. So what do I need to do to solve it? Then there's stress of problems that I cannot solve. I have no handle on it. We see a lot of anxiety presents itself that way, right? So what does it actually mean? Well, okay, it means I need to make a change. Maybe it means I need to work out more. Maybe it, what is the safety my brain is trying to perceive or to gain by thinking about this kind of stuff? And 2, can I just let it go? Can I let it go for now and realize? Can I tell myself through mantra, through meditation, through breath work, I can't do anything about this right now. When the time comes and it's appropriate, I will be prepared to deal with this. And thank yourself for feeling and experiencing those feelings and those emotions.
My wife is really good about recognizing when I'm stuck in that stressful mindset of like thinking about things and thinking about answers to my questions. And she'll say, well, maybe just right now we don't know the answer. Right. Maybe right now we're just like hanging out. We'll find the answer eventually. We always find the answer, but maybe right now it's just a day to hang out, not talk about this shit and just let it be. Yeah. Maybe we don't need to talk about this right now. Yeah. And she's been really good about helping with me with that because of the childhood that I had. I was always like, I needed the answer now because I couldn't move on unless I had that answer now, and I'd get stuck. And I didn't know how to redirect my energy, so I'd be in that energy of negativity for a while. You know? And my first instinct is, of course, to fight. Yeah. And especially with drinking, if I was stuck in a bad place for that day and I added alcohol on top of that, most likely I was probably going to get into a fight because I couldn't let go of some of those things. And a lot of times with ownership, I would blame alcohol for my actions, and I would blame my childhood, or I blame somebody else for my actions, but they're my actions.
It's pretty easy to, like, even if you've done something overtly and been like, I didn't do it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that wasn't me.
That wasn't me. Like, it's pretty easy, and sometimes it's just the easiest thing to do is just to say, well, to blame somebody else, and we get defensive, right? We get defensive, and then we start defending our position, right? When it would be just so much easier to just take the L real quick and take the tap and like just reset and move on.
Yeah. Like there's all these times when somebody will be like, I didn't do that. My alternate ego,
Yeah.
My alternate ego is D-Ray. It wasn't me. That was D-Ray that did that.
Right.
The same person, but D-Ray, you could put blame on D-Ray as opposed to put blame on Danny.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have that.
Yeah. I'm Todd Packer.
Yeah.
Todd Packer. He was the obnoxious character from The Office, and he was always the life of the party. But you drink too much and you might meet Todd Packer.
That's right.
Right.
Same thing. If you drink too much, or if I drink too much tequila, and my brain is off, D-Ray might come out.
Todd Packer could be so much fun. He also might run up he might bankrupt you on credit card debt.
Yeah.
Who knows?
You don't know.
Right.
When we're talking with men about ownership and we're teaching them, a lot of times you have to go back to like the very basics of just every day. It's almost like lying.
Yeah.
Like instead of lying, tell like the most blunt truth. How do I look today? Like shit.
Yeah.
Don't mask anything.
Yeah.
But when you have a situation or something that you struggle with, drinking, porn, women, lying, credit card debt or put it whatever you want to put it in. The only way to kind of like stop that is to be fully the opposite of whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with ownership. Take complete ownership of everything.
Yeah.
I fucked up. My bad.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've told you this, but I've started arguments, fights and bullshit. And then when we have a sit down, the first thing I'll say is, hey, I am sorry.
Yeah.
I am so sorry for my actions.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what happens is it lets all of a sudden you can see on the other person their guard is down.
It just drops.
It drops because they came in ready for a fight.
Yep.
They were not prepared for an I'm sorry for Danny's actions. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I did that. I shouldn't have acted like that. I understand that that's a character flaw of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but usually what they want to do is they want to take some of that ownership back.
Yeah.
They don't want you to take all of the blame.
Yeah.
They want to take some of that ownership themselves.
Yeah, it builds a bridge, right? You build a bridge by helping people, let their guard down. I think that's absolutely true. I think that's one of the most liberating things you can do is to admit that you were wrong, that you were at fault, to take ownership. Sometimes it gets obnoxious because that person is not maybe as in tune. I've definitely had a few scenarios, specifically work scenarios. Even recently, I made a communication error and sent a quote to somebody, and they saw some numbers that they weren't supposed to see. I mean, relatively harmless, right? The quote that they got came back much cheaper because the vendor didn't have the opportunity to put their numbers to it. Well, it's an easy fix, right? Like we can recall that and they can put their numbers on and they can see the actual quote. Unfortunately, the vendor was like so incensed by it. You might have thought that I just spit in their mom's face, and it just blows up. I'm going to get your manager involved, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. This won't happen again. I'm definitely learning my lesson here. But does there ever come a point where you're enabling that shitty behavior after you've taken ownership?
Man, that's a hard one because I think like then at that point you're thinking you're putting yourself in the other person's shoes and trying to what we've talked about already of like expecting them to act the way that you act.
Right. You're trying to teach a lesson when perhaps that person isn't ready and you just need to keep
or holding them to an expectation of your own, what the expectation you hold of yourself.
Yeah.
Kind of like what we talked about with Tristan and the wrestle offs at wrestling, where I expected the other parents to act the way that I was acting or to be the way that I was being. Now going back forward, I'd be like, oh, way different. Or just instead of like giving that person grace and being like, like you said, you may not be ready for this right now.
Yeah.
It's cool. Like, I understand. Like, I apologize. Hey, I'm sorry for my actions. You're right. You you should be upset. You should be upset that you've seen those numbers, because I shouldn't have showed those to you.
Right.
But I did. I'll learn from it.
Yeah.
And going forward, I'm gonna know. I'm gonna learn from this, right? I think as a man, if you expect the person to act the way that you act, you're probably 100% of the time going to be let down.
Yeah.
Where I think you see successes is with your children.
Yeah.
For sure, with your significant other and your wife, girlfriend, friend, whatever.
Yeah.
Where you and I have had some heated arguments where we both came in ready for battle and both of our guards are up. And at the end of the day, we both were able to walk away and be like, I know where you came from.
Yeah.
You know where I came from. We may not have seen eye to eye at that moment, but we were able to find grace with each other.
There's been some real beauty in that growth.
For sure.
For me as a man, right? Like, it would be easy for me to die on a sword and be like, but there's been some real beautiful moments in the growth, even in arguments I have with my former partner.
Sure.
Even with arguments I have with my children, right? To say, hey, I was wrong. I remember we went to Hawaii last summer before school started. Did I tell this story on the podcast before?
I don't remember.
Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong on this trip. Like, 5-hour layover in Honolulu, not really understanding we could have left the airport, come back.
Sure.
Get to Kauai and it's 11 o'clock and can't find my credit card. I
remember this.
I booked the car with, blow up at the children for picking on each other in the car.
Everything's going bad.
Right. The freaking hotel reservation was missing. And
you had to change hotels.
I had to change hotels. It was like everything they could, and I lost it. And I'm like, man, I've done so much work on myself to have lost it at my kids at that point. And I think everybody in the car was crying at one point, and like, because I was angry. We were all tired. We were all exhausted.
Sure.
We all wanted to just enjoy Hawaii. And, we ended up, the trip I think was great, but like, I just remember being so disappointed in myself that I let myself get to that point.
Yeah.
And I took ownership. Everyone was like, well, Cozy had the credit card. And I'm like, well, why didn't I check I had it before I left? Sure. I should have checked. I didn't know that was the rental car policy, that you had to have, the actual car you rented on file.
What's funny is I've also been with you on a trip where you've improvised with things instantly, and the trip turned out better because of your improvisation. And you're like, hey man, I know that I booked this car, but this is not working. I'm not waiting in this line.
Yeah.
That line is shorter. I'm going there. Dude, that turned out unreal for us.
Yeah.
We did not wait in line. There was a line that was insane.
The car was cheaper.
It
was brand new.
The people were
way nice.
And all those people that were standing in line, we walked past them like, how come they're not doing the same thing? But you took the reins, and we were all like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And having ownership, whether it's bad and it turns out bad and we learn from it, or it turns out good. Next thing you know, it's better.
Yeah.
You get to have like, man, you keep your line never going too high, never going too low.
Yeah.
I think with your family, especially, like, they, no matter what, are going to give you grace, but they are so appreciative when you accept ownership of, I should not have fucked that up.
Yep.
I tell my boys all the time, I know that you give me grace. I know that you give me passes.
Right.
Both my boys could whoop my ass. They both could. Until, like, if I needed to stand on business.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, if you meet your dad, I'm probably gonna fight dirty.
Yeah.
But you know both my boys.
Yeah.
They're tough as shit.
Yeah.
And they also are so opinionated.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people get a little, I can see in their eyes that they're like, man, these dudes are, three of them? This opinionated? Holy shit. But both my boys will, Braxton especially, because of some of the things he's went through, very, 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 very extreme ownership.
Yeah.
Tristan, it is the thing that we are working the most on with him. I remember like times that you've told me you need to do this with him.
Yeah.
You need to do this with him. And there's been times when I'm like fight back at you.
Yeah.
Like that's my kid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've always been like, no, don't. Tyler's not attacking me.
No.
He's giving me advice because he sees things from a different perspective. And I've always been like, I appreciate that.
Dude, and we see the growth. We see the growth. Like even at the rink the other day, like I walked into the office and I'm like, whoa, Tristan, not only did he have like what he wanted to get done to hold himself accountable for that day, it was like all checked off, and you like went and you looked at the stuff and you were just like, damn.
Kid. And it was hard for me, right? I mean, that day that you kind of like told me, hey, you need to do this with Tristan. You need to be this with Tristan. I was like, my ears were burning, my hair was on fire, and I was like, what in the world? And I remember thinking like, thank you so much. Thank you for being such a powerful man to know that I needed to hear that from a different perspective. And that happens a lot because Tristan is around my friends so many times, you know, where they see things that I don't see and they give me advice. And I'm like,
yeah,
you know, if I'm in a moment, I may take it wrong, but if I have ownership, if I take ownership, if I'm accepting and I'm willing to accept your guidance as a man, you don't have negative context to it. You only have like this is what I want to see for you as a man.
It brings it back full circle too, right? Because there's been times too where you've given me advice about my children that I've heeded, and it's like it pays off, and it's not always what you want to hear.
Agreed.
And sometimes the fault is on the deliverer of the message too, right? Like messages can be construed, messages can be not delivered correctly. It's about taking a breath and like getting through it. Does this relationship matter to
Agreed.
me? You know, if the relationship doesn't matter to you, if it's already kind of a contentious relationship, you know, there may be points where it's just like, I don't care. I'm going to war with you.
I agree.
Yeah. You know, and that needs to happen. You're standing on that business.
Standing on that business.
Yeah. But if that relationship matters to you, you know, you'll find ways to work through the hurt. And I think that, again, I'll say this again, like that is the mark of true good relationships, is your ability to work through and find repair in those moments where that feedback has gone negative, and you guys you're not seeing eye to eye.
And ownership of that moment is going to give you some clarity that will impact you when shit does hit the fan.
Yes.
Right. When shit hits the fan and you need guidance, you need space, you need somebody to be on your side. If you've done your job, I'm going to fight 100% for you, and you're not going to fight by yourself. You're not going to fight against anybody by yourself. You're going to fight. We're going to fight together.
Right.
Right. And we're going to have a common end goal.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I think men need to work on. And I think having extreme ownership and everybody going to a common goal is going to give you so much clarity in your life.
Yeah.
But start in small doses. You know, just take ownership of the day, take ownership of the moment, take ownership of an argument. You know, and I know I've told you a bunch of times, like, what did you bring to the fight? What did you bring to the fight? Can you just find clarity in what you brought to the fight?
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like,
oh,
fuck off. Other times you're like, you're right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially in prolonged wars of attrition, right? You have to start taking more and more ownership and understand, like, are the casualties we're sustaining worth it? Whether that be just your own mental health or the relationships that you're destroying or that are in disrepair in that like super fascinating conversation. I think the other thing you've taught me too is just be kind on yourself, because sometimes taking ownership does not feel the best.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes it feels like a real kick in the cojones.
Kick in the nuts, right? And then ask lots of questions.
Get fucking curious.
Be the person that's like, even if you're like, have no gi on and I'm going to ask you how to baseball choke.
Yeah. Baseball bat choke. Yeah.
but I mean, like, there's ways to do it. Let's figure out a way to do it. You know, be curious. Be curious. Like, just ask questions. Find comfortable soundboards.
Yeah. Find your tribe. Start finding your tribe.
Fail a million times.
My favorite acronym for fail is first attempt at learning.
Yeah.
First attempt at learning. Every time you fail. Okay, so maybe not the second time or the third time, but like, yeah, your first, maybe you tweaked it, right? Like there's, you know.
We're going to fail. This was, Tyler, that worked out so well. I'm so glad that we soundboarded before, because I think it opened up our minds for the conversation. Being back in the studio to me is like amazing, because I watched a couple of things on YouTube where I'm looking at their setup and I'm like, man, our setup at the studio is amazing.
Yeah.
Plus we have the bus. Plus we're able to use some of the academy when we have members on. I think that this was one of those podcasts where we hit the topic the way that we wanted it to.
Yeah.
You know, we really, this next week, by when this comes out, it will be Friday. And I believe that we'll know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I believe that we know what's going to happen. I hope that everybody's kind to each other. I hope everybody's generous to each other. I hope that everybody understands that we have one fight, and that is to protect our country, to protect our people, to protect our children, and whoever that is in the office, let's support them to the best of our ability.
Right.
Let's not fight anymore.
But it's such a, I always get so frustrated with this because I'm fairly apolitical, right? Like I tend to like to read.
I'm not. Just so we're clear.
I tend to like to read up. Like I could give, like, I will admit I had voted for Kanye West. I still think he would be the best president. Guy's a fucking genius. Yeah. He may be a bit mental, but like, honestly, like I don't, you know, and we're not a political podcast, and I don't want to get into this as we're wrapping up, but like we are going to know. I believe in being involved. And as I have an 18-year-old daughter who's voting for the first time, I want her to be involved. Even if she doesn't love either of the candidates, just get involved.
Get involved.
If you don't get involved, you don't have a right to bitch.
Do not complain to me if you did not vote.
Right? Even if you throw away your vote and vote for Kanye West.
Don't tell me shit if you didn't vote.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Agreed. So let's be kind to each other. Let's remember to have ownership of what you've done, what you did. Ask lots of questions. Find somebody that you can talk to that you trust.
Right.
Find a soundboard. If you are having crazy thoughts in your brain, get them out so they don't sound so crazy, because those will manifest.
Yes.
Keep your baseline.
Yeah. Get some help if you need it. Call us. Sure. I'd much rather, you know, bear the cost of your tears than the weight of your coffin.
I agree with you.
Man, thank you so much, Danny. I appreciate the conversation.
What you got going on next week?
Next week, man.
Or coming up, because we got the election coming up, and so we're going to be voting.
I'm going to be voting. I'm rolling a lot of jiu-jitsu. I got to make some decisions about heading down to Durango. I need a week out of town. I love Durango. I love Durango too. I'm tempted to throw the rooftop tent back on and like.
Oh, you told me this.
You know, I can work from anywhere, so like maybe I'll be working from the middle of the desert in Moab. I just don't know how warm it'll be. I'm a little bit concerned if I'll be warm enough in the tent. And as much as I love the tent, I also like being comfortable. So we'll see.
Cool.
What about you? What you got going on?
I'm hoping to purchase my sauna this week.
I'm hoping you purchase it too.
I'm hoping I purchase it. I've got to make a phone call tomorrow. I'm pretty positive of which one I'm picking. I'm hoping that they will allow us to say their name, say the one that I'm using, and then use them as a just use the platform that we have to promote them. Not that I'm looking for anything from them, but I don't want to, like, if I want you to benefit me as I benefit you. Let's help each other out.
Yeah.
They have a killer deal right now, and so hopefully the next podcast I will tell the song that I'm going to buy. We've decided that how we're gonna do the backyard for spring next year, putting in some trees and some things and some for the sauna and the cold plunge. Winter's here, so I'm gonna go into hibernation.
I'm gonna
hibernate in the wrestling room. I've been on more phone calls, more Zoom meetings, more Snapchats than I have in a while, trying to get the wrestling direction the way that I want it to go. Trip and I are really active in it, so that's kind of nice. And so I have meetings the next 3 days, meeting with gear, meeting with some people that are going to help us fund the program, and then hopefully work that into the spring season funding the club.
I'm excited to come to some meets.
I'm excited too. We have some cool stuff that we're going to do for Park City.
I'd love to come in and work on my stand-up game.
Park City Wrestling. Let's go. Park City Jiu-Jitsu. Come see us on Sunday.
Yeah.
Open mats.
Mayhem on the mat.
Mayhem on the mat.
Mayhem on the mat. Get yourself a Mayhem on the Mat t-shirt. Again, they just represent what we are trying to do here. Work out your mental issues in a positive way. Hit up Mayhem on the Mat Scouts for checkout for 15% off.
At Cabo.thebus if you want to use the bus as a prop.
Yep.
You can take pictures with it. We'll come set it up. Tyler and I'll come hang out. We'll set it up for you guys. We're going to put an ad page for it. We're going to use, you're more than welcome to camp in it if you want. I'll set it up for you. Can't drive it. You can't do anything, but you can hang out in a vintage VW bus for the night.
So sweet.
And we'll set it up for you. We'll show you the things that you need. And yeah, we're just growing the brand, growing our population, and keep growing as a community.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
Cheers.
Rise up, no turning back.